Welcome back, folks, to the Saturday Five. Let's crack straight on with the next debate. Up next, it's Albie. Albie's going to tell us why he reckons Rishi Sunak is going to make history for the Conservatives and win the next election. Let's start the clock.
Rishi Sunak can win the next general election. This week, he showed his mettle when he passed the Windsor Framework, and he solved a problem that three Conservative Prime Ministers couldn't. The Brexit mess in Northern Ireland. Not even Boris could sort that out. He solved the problems associated with Liz Truss's mini-budget and stabilised the economy, after Liz Truss tried to hit all the right notes, but unfortunately, they all came out in the wrong order. He regularly gets better poll ratings, personal poll ratings, than Keir Starmer, whose singular plan for Britain is tax the rich, tax the non-doms and tax the energy giants. That's not a plan for Britain, that's a plan for decline. Rishi Sunak has a plan to cut debt, to cut inflation, to stop the boats, to grow the economy and end the NHS waiting list once and for all. And that's why Rishi can win. So, Benjamin, I've got a feeling that you may disagree with me because you quite like Keir, don't you?
I mean, you say Liz Truss hit all the right notes in the wrong order. I mean, I've heard screaming cats sound better than Liz Truss's time in government.
So you don't like to pay less tax?
Well, we're not paying less tax because of her. You know, earlier I talked about the BBC costing £13 a year more. Liz Truss costs 500 quid or more on people's mortgages every single month. But look, I don't think the Tories are going to win the election, and that's because people are so much worse off. And the truth is that people like you, who I think are sort of establishment Tory figures, have been in power for so long that you've lost touch with the country and you've become entitled.
Well, hang on,
and
Benjamin.
Rishi Sunak is going to be Rishi Sunaked by the time it gets to the election.
The truth is, Benjamin, Rishi Sunak gets really good personal approval ratings, actually better than Keir Starmer's. So, I mean, what do you say to that? Why is he getting better personal approval ratings than your man Keir?
I mean, he is a clown running the circus because you've got every type of nut job running around in the Conservative Party in Parliament, right? They are not a team. They can't decide what they want to do. They've now got, you know, he's trying to stop the boats. He can't even stop Boris.
I'm interested in what Emily has to say.
Yeah, may I just say that I'm not sure if I'm suffering from a bit of amnesia, Benjamin, but I think it was actually lockdown which
Indeed.
you full-heartedly supported that has led to this economic situation where we have rampant inflation. We also have massive NHS waiting lists. This is what Rishi Sunak has been dealt. He's been dealt these cards because of people like you who are constantly clamouring for more lockdown.
You wouldn't hear that on the BBC.
I'm sorry, Emily. I think I might be suffering from amnesia. Who was the Chancellor who introduced lockdown?
But, Darren, on the
Rishi
Brexit...
Sunak, in case you're wondering.
On the
He said
Brexit
he
side
didn't
of the
want
debate,
it, but who knows?
Do you not agree that Rishi Sunak solving the Windsor Framework is actually really great for Northern Ireland?
The Windsor Framework is a reheated microwave meal of the Northern Ireland Protocol.
But there's a storm on break.
It absolutely is. The storm and break is a break on Brexit because it actually means that we will never diverge away from the European Union because we would be diverging away from Northern Ireland. He has hived off part of our country and accepted that we're doing that. Unionist communities in Northern Ireland are distraught, totally, feel utterly heartbroken by what the Prime Minister's agreed to.
Dominique?
My sort of feeling about this, and the vote that was had was on the storm break, and it is better than the Northern Ireland Protocol. It wasn't working. Even Liz Truss, when she was Foreign Secretary, said that the Northern Ireland Protocol wasn't in keeping with the Good Friday Agreement. It is just factually better than what Boris Johnson was able to negotiate. And I think what people forget is that we actually have to negotiate with the European Union.
Yeah, I don't disagree with any of that. But Rishi Sunak is selling it as the land of milk and honey when actually it's really not, because ultimately not a lot has changed in the
what's
actual
your
deal.
solution, Darren?
Well, my solution would be to say to the EU, you go ahead, lovey, build your border, and it would be teared down immediately. It is ridiculous to suggest that before the EU we didn't have a different regulations and rules to Northern Ireland and the Republic of Ireland. Between the two, there would not be a hard border because the people in both sides would not build one. They wouldn't stand for it. I think the EU has constantly...
There would be a trade war, though,
he has held us over a barrel. Look, if there's a trade war, the EU would be cutting off their nose to spite their face. So if Ursula von der Leyen wants to do that,
I agree with you to a large extent, but the problem is you have staunch Brexiteers now, the likes of David Davis, the likes of Steve Baker, actually saying this is probably the best we're going to get. Time for a bit of pragmatism, time for a bit of negotiation, and to actually give up a little. And yes, I agree with you that this is not an ideal solution at all, and I'm sure some viewers at home, particularly those in Northern Ireland, might have something to say about it. But the problem is there is Brexit fatigue now.
Yeah, exactly. And people in Northern Ireland, they were recently polled. They overwhelmingly support it, and actually it's overwhelmingly unionists that support it. It's primarily the DUP that don't.
Well,
I
Dominique,
think people just want Stormont to get back into motion.
If I was a unionist voter and I listened to everything Rishi Sunak said he's actually secured, I'd be happy as Larry. But when you actually read what the EU have saying they've secured, it's the square root of that fall.
Of course they're going to talk up what they've achieved, but in reality, we've been able to allow trade of things like sausages, which we weren't able to do before. The Stormont break, yes, it's not perfect, but it does allow Stormont to actually raise concerns with Westminster, and there is a process for doing that.
Yeah, but it's more, more complicated than Jenga.
You know, going back to the question of whether Rishi Sunak can win the election, well, what an achievement. We can get sausages around the country. And that's really what's going to win the election.
I'm not 9 o'clock yet. Solving the problems in Northern Ireland was actually one of the things that was making investors really worried about investing in the UK, because they were worried there was going to be a trade war with Europe.
The mess you caused.
Now that has been resolved, investors are feeling a lot more comfortable about the future of Britain, and that means more prosperity for all of us.
They've just hiked corporation tax. What business is going to want to come here? They're being ripped off to high heaven.
Look, the decision on corporation tax, as a Conservative, is not one that I was completely comfortable with. But equally, we spent £700 billion during the pandemic. We've got to pay it back somehow, and I'm confident Rishi will lower taxes before the next election.
But do you know what? The one thing Liz Truss got right, and she got very little right, was that we need growth.
We'll have to leave it there.
What Liz Truss got right?
OK, folks, after the... Yeah, you've heard it here first.